Good evening. I'm David Ossman, and welcome to On Stage, the series that introduces you to the people who create the art that you and I enjoy. Well, tonight I have two guests. In just a little while, I'll be talking with Rebecca Paris. She's a well-known jazz singer, and of course, we'll get a chance to hear her perform. But now I want you to meet my first guest. He's a noted sculptor. His name is Kahlil Gibran. Welcome. I am very pleased to meet you.
My pleasure to be here.
Indeed, you have been a working artist now for something like 40 years.
Well, really much longer. I started when I was 5, and I had parental approval. My family wanted me to be the artist.
They wanted you to be
an
artist?
Oh, yes, and the people I went to art school were on the GI Bill. I was there for the blood and guts.
We're surrounded on the stage here with your sculptures, and I read that you started sculpting because painting was too easy. It didn't demand enough of you. Is that right?
Well, I had a psychological problem. I had this kind of control that I had to exercise, and my energy was far in excess of what was exhausting in the process of painting. So I had some psychiatric advice, and I moved into sculpture on a serious level. I always sculpted since I was a child.
Your father was a craftsperson, is that right?
My father was a cabinet maker. Yes.
And you started out in that field as well, working with wood?
Oh, yes, and with metal. I made all kinds of things.
Tell me this, if you, let's say you've been working, it's been 40 years, 4 decades, something like that, let's round it off. How has being an artist changed over 4 decades? Is it harder now in the 80s than it was, say, in the 50s?
Yes. It's harder for the artist to encompass what is going on. It's hard to make decisions. It's hard to get the feel of the stream. When I was in art school, there were 50 galleries in New York and 500 artists. Now there's 500 galleries and 50,000 artists just in New York City. I mean, that's a very great number to contend with.
Doesn't it mean, though, that there's a greater interest in or appreciation or market for art, though?
Well, everything has increased, but still the space is dominated by a select few, and the market is dominated by a select few. Most artists have to work at something else. They teach, they work in frame shops, they do all kinds of things.
Have you done anything else but be an artist?
Oh, yes, and I still do. I'm a craftsman, too. I enjoy making objects. I'd prefer to be called an object maker rather than a sculptor, because it's all one life, you know. It's not the fact that, gee, if I'm not sculpting, it's a terrible day. I can make a pot. I could do a carving of a frame, you know, anything. And I do it for other people, and I earn a living that way, too.
I saw a little pamphlet of your work. It was called Muses, Medallions, and Monuments, and I think we must be surrounded here by some of the muses. Could you tell me about some of these figures?
The figures you see here are a sharp contrast to the figures that I was doing in the 50s and early 60s. These are not an intentional contrast. I reflect my life because I believe that art is the expression of experience. And a good artist is able to express his experience on a universal level because he sees things in a universal way, not, gee, I'm suffering, but gee, mankind is suffering. And although my early work, which was hand-hammered and on which you could injure yourself, was because we went through the Korean War and we went through the Vietnamese War, and suddenly I reflected that in those works because the medium is the message, and it wasn't just that the subjects were biblical, it was that the texture was meaningful. The medium told you that this was severe, that the world was tough, and it was tragic. And suddenly, things changed, and I became a little more lyric, and a little more elegant in my attitude, and it reflected itself in some of these objects you see here.
Well, lyric, yes, beautiful lyric faces. This piece that's directly behind us here is posed just off into space, just leaning, just reaching, about to leave the planet.
Well, I tell you, that reflects, again, the precarious situation. That it's precarious. And it tells you that it might fall. It never will, because there's a certain kind of physics involved which supports it. It really is very stable. But I feel that there is an instability in the world. And even though the figure is elegant, it reflects the fact that, gosh, you know, it might not be so safe tomorrow.
We're right on the edge, in a way.
We're right on the edge, exactly.
Let me throw one of your own quotes back at you, which is
quoting.
the only sin is in squandering talent.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I believe that if you have talent, it's a grace. It's one of the gifts from the Creator. And if you violate that gift, if you don't develop it for the best, for the betterment of mankind, if your gift is to open the door to someone else just a little bit, to show him how there can be some small escape from this hellhole, which is, you know, the world. It's a tough place.
Through art you find this escape.
Well, I find it through art. Other people find it through music, through dance, through literature, through whatever, even through making money.
Well, there's the other side of being the artist, is how do you do that? You have to sell these beautiful ladies. You have to sell the precariousness of your life.
No, you don't have to sell them.
No?
No.
What?
You can work. You can have a small job. And then you can not be under the thumb of the market.
Is that an advantage to living in Boston rather than, let's say, New York, where the market is surrounding you and the
Depends on
anxiety
your
of it?
attitude. If you want to be part of the scene, you compete, and you're governed by the competition, and you're governed by the dealer who says to you, hey, you know, that piece sold, could you do another one?
Just like it.
Just like it. And boy, I've turned down a lot of sculpture commissions on that basis.
There are a number of pieces of yours that can be seen by folks right here in town, in Boston, right?
Yes.
Where would they be?
Well, there's one in Brockton, A Victim. It's a ferocious piece. And then there's one right in Copley Square on the Dartmouth Street side of the public library. And that's a piece that can be seen. Most of my pieces are far-flung. In Cheekwood, in Nashville, Tennessee, they have my Pietà, which is amazing. You know, that work was welded. That was not cast.
These are steel rods that you welded together.
Yes, and hand-hammered. It's the stuff that, you know, little guys are tough.
Hard work, soft work. It's hard work being an artist.
Oh,
and
it certainly is.
It never was soft work.
No.
And, but these are some real beauties that we're surrounded by, and it's been a pleasure for me to talk to you. Kahlil Gibran, you have, I must say, a very familiar name.
Oh.
And I suppose I should take a last moment to say that you are a relative of the famous poet and mystic who died many years ago in the 30s.
31.
1931.
Yes. He was a good man.
Well, so are you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.